Starting this year, 2025, a new election system will be in place in Germany for the big election of the parliament or the general elections for the Bundestagswahl that happens every 4 years. You laugh because I had my accent?
No, because you looked at me all for approval.
This new election system was agreed in 2023 to prevent the parliament from growing in numbers, which just increases the costs. And actually, Germany had last election, the largest democracy or government in place in the world because there's so many seats being added to the parliament. And this new system will prevent that. So in this video, we will not only explain the new election system, but also go into details how the votes of citizens actually affect the formation of the parliament in Germany. In this video, we will specifically talk about what role do the two different votes play? Yes, you have two votes. How does the parliament get formed? How does the government get formed? And who elects the German Chancellor? Spoiler alert, it is not the citizens of Germany. Hey, my name is Jen and I'm from Guatemala.
And mine is Yvonne and I'm German.
And together we're from simplegermany.com, where we create English content to empower internationals to settle into life in Germany more smoothly. Let's start with the first topic of what roles do the two votes play in the formation of the government and the parliament in Germany.
Let's first just clarify that every German citizen that is above the age of 18 gets automatically asked to vote in Germany. There is no pre-registration needed or anything like that. And on the voting slip, the ballot, everyone has two votes. And each vote, the first and second vote, play a different role. Now, how to actually vote, like how to make your cross and select who to vote for, we will cover in a different video, which will come out next Monday.
The voting slip is split into two columns. On the left column, you will have your first vote or Erststimme. And on the second column, you will have your second vote or the Zweitstimme.
The first vote goes to a specific candidate, actually by name, in your very local electoral district, or also called constituency. So the winner of the constituency usually gets a direct mandate, meaning they qualify to move up to parliament directly. However, in the new system, the directly needs to be taken a little bit less serious, like it's not 100% guaranteed, because it depends on the vote of, or the general result of the second vote.
The interesting thing here is that the first column of the voting slip will look very different in every district of Germany. And just as a fun fact, there's 299 districts in all of Germany.
Now the second vote, the second column, so the column on the right, goes to the party, like the political party on a state and federal level. So it is the stronger vote, and it actually determines the overall percentage a party will be represented by in the parliament.
Okay, now that we know the difference between the two votes, the next question is, how does the parliament get formed?
Right, so after we've all voted, then of course all of the votes get counted. And then there's two factors that play a role in which party moves with how many people into the parliament. And let's look at the first rule. The first rule depends on the result of the second vote. And that is the overall percentage that the party got voted for from all of the votes. So let's look at an example to make this easier to understand. Let's say 46 million valid second votes have been collected. That's our overall number. And in this example, we have pretended that there's 11 parties that were able to be voted for, because at the time of recording, 11 are currently qualified to be voted for the 2025 election. And then we've just put in a bunch of random numbers on how many votes they got, and calculated the percentage rate of the total votes collected per party and sorted them by most votes to least votes. Now, why is the percentage relevant? Because in order for a party to move into the parliament, they need to cross the so-called 5% hurdle. 5% Hürde, you might have heard on the news in that context. So that means all of the parties that have less than 5% right now in that screenshot will not make it into parliament based on the first factor that we're discussing. However, there is of course the second factor that comes into play, and that is when we look at the results of the first vote. The first vote comes into play here if a party was able to win 3 or more districts in all of Germany, so 3 out of the 299 with the first vote. If that is the case, that actually trumps the 5% hurdle. So if we look at our example, there will be a change. If we take a look, party 5, 2, 9, 7, 10, and 3 all have more than 5%. So they are already in parliament. However, if we look at party 11 down here, technically with 4.9% of the total second votes, they should not make it into parliament. But if we look at this number of the first vote, they have won 10 individual constituencies, so electoral districts, so 10 direct mandates. And that makes them move up into parliament as well, with their 4.9% of total share of the parliament seats for their party.
The same would happen for Party 4, right? Because they have 3 direct mandates as well.
That is correct. You're absolutely right. However, parties 8, 6, and 1 are definitely out and did not make it into parliament.
Now that we know the parties that will be in the parliament, the big question is how many seats will they get? Because there's a limited amount of seats in the parliament, and that is 630 seats. And this is where the new election system comes into play, because previously more seats could be added, but now no more. There is a limit, 630. So there needs to be a method to be able to calculate, based on the percentage and the amount of seats, how many seats each party gets.
Correct. The method is not new. It has always been used in the past, and it's a mathematical method called the Webster or the Saint-Set-Lagu, I don't know how to pronounce this method. And to be honest, this is out of the scope of this video, so I just asked our friend ChatGPT to calculate the number of seats based on our example, throw it here on the screen, and based on this method, we now know the seats each party will hold in the parliament based on the overall percentage they received through the votes. And now, as a last step, the parties need to, of course, name the representatives, the delegates that they will have in parliament. And depending on how many seats each party gets, the delegates that they will send to parliament will consist of the winners of the electoral district, so from vote 1, so the direct mandates, and or additional members of the party that have been pre-listed prior to the election to fill the seats that they received in parliament.
Are you planning on becoming a German citizen? If you are, this is very important information to know because it will come in your German citizenship test, which is in German, by the way, in bureaucratic German. When I studied for this test, I was shocked actually at the questions because I didn't understand half of them. So that's why Ivan and I have prepared a study kit where we translate all the official questions into English, no AI, because AI does make mistakes. And you can check out that study kit in the link in the description below. Okay, so now we have our candidates or our mandates, or how do you call them? Delegates in the parliament. But now that doesn't mean we have a government. We just have people sitting in the parliament. So how does a government get formed?
It's a very good question. And this is actually where a lot of patience is required from us, the people.
Yes, where things get spiced up.
In order for a government to be formed, a majority needs to be reached. And because Germany has so many different political parties, actually in history, not once has one single party reached more than 50% of the votes in percentage to reach a majority. And that is where the famous coalition building is happening. So parties need to come together, usually it's 2 or 3, that form an alliance to then form a coalition. And those then form the kind of like government contract for the next 4 years. Koalitionsvertrag in German.
Actually, small correction, it's since 1957 that not one single party has reached more than 50% of the votes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so pretty much they need to find people that they align with, the parties, other parties that they align with. So then together with their percentages, they can have more than 51%.
More than 50%.
More than 50%.
Yeah, correct. And why did I say we need patience? Because this can sometimes take weeks or months. It has taken up to half a year for a government to be formed because, like Jen just said, the parties need to, prior to the election, every party has their program and their views and the things they want to push forward. However, now that they need to come together, they need to compromise on certain aspects, right? And need to find a common denominator that they want to shape Germany with in the next 4 years. And that, depending on how far away or how close their opinions are, that can take longer or not.
And just to give you some real examples of coalitions that have happened to the past, what's super funny, let's say, is that each coalition has a specific name, and that's based on the color of the party. So, for example, the very popular one, the Ampelkoalition.
Well, popular is the past one, right?
Yes, yeah. But I say popular because that's the one that I've heard the most. The Ampelkoalition, which is pretty much the street light party.
Traffic light.
Traffic light party. Yeah, you're right. It's because it's the parties are with the colors red, what is it, yellow and green.
Correct. Yeah, and red standing for the SPD, green, yellow for the FDP, and the green for the Greens.
Yes. Other coalitions that have happened is the Große Koalition, and that is between the two biggest parties in Germany, and that was...
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call it biggest, but the two parties that got the most votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those were?
Those were the CDU, black, and the SPD, red. So in Große Koalition, there is no funny color.
Yeah.
But there's also been in the past, in the recent past, I mean, we're not going through all of history now, the Schwarz-Gelb, so the black-yellow coalition, and that is was between the CDU and the FDP.
Yeah, and I think how many colors are in the coalition really depends on what percentages each party has, right? Because if you already have 40%, you pretty much technically just need a party that has 10 or more %, and then maybe you only have two colors.
Yeah.
So let's see what kind of coalition happens in 2020.
Correct. And
6, because 25 is elections, might take a year to get a coalition. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I hope not, yeah. And just to make it clear, usually parties already from the get-go kind of like have their favorites to coalition with, depending on how close they are. And then there are certain parties that others refuse to coalition with. So usually it's never the entire spectrum of who is in the parliament that is open for negotiation, because some are just too far away from their own opinion.
Yes.
But let's follow what happens this year.
Yes, and by how close they are, you mean how close their positions are.
Correct. Their views, right? Their politics, yes, their beliefs, their values.
Yeah, and once the coalition gets announced and is formed, then officially we have a government. And whoever didn't make into the coalition, they are part of the
opposition.
I wanted to say resistance of the opposition. They're still in the parliament, however, they're in the opposition role for the next 4 years.
Correct.
Okay, so parliament check, government check, but now we need a chancellor. And the chancellor is not voted by the people, actually. That's super interesting. How does the chancellor get voted?
So once the government is in place, then actually the Bundespräsident comes into play, who officially suggests the chancellor candidates. Now, this is just an official way, because prior to election, we all already know who are the chancellor candidates of each party. But the official way is for the president to kind of like announce them for election by the parliament.
Yes, and how the Bundespräsident gets elected is beyond the scope of this video, because it's a completely different thing. It's not part of this, right?
But usually during an election, there is a president already in place who doesn't need to get elected for this reason.
Yes, exactly.
So again, once the government is there, the president suggests the chancellor candidates, and then the parliament, that just freshly voted on parliament, elects the chancellor. And historically, most of the times, the chancellor comes from the party that received the most votes, like the most votes in the second vote in general.
The one that had the highest percentage.
Correct. However, it's not a given. There have been 2 historic incidents when that was actually not the case, because the party that received the second amount of votes coalitioned with another party, thus had more votes than the one that got the party that got most votes, the majority, not the majority, the most votes. And hence the chancellor came actually from the party that had the second most votes. So really anything is possible, but typically I would say the chancellor comes from the party with the most or second most votes, depending on the coalitions.
Yes, and the chancellor is the most important, I would say, figure in Germany. The Bundespräsident has more of a representative role, and it's the chancellor actually I would say the most important role that you can have in Germany. Like Merkel, for example, was the chancellor for 16 years. So it is possible also to be a chancellor for recurring years, as long also as your party is in parliament and you get recommended or announced by the Bundespräsident.
Correct. But that is a good point. There is no limited amount of terms a chancellor can serve.
Yeah. Also, Kohl was also 16 years as a chancellor.
Helmut Kohl, yes.
Yeah. And then we have a government and a chancellor, and bam, ta-da! Everything is formed for the next, let's say, 3.5 years, a functioning government.
4, yeah.
If you already hold a German passport and you've never voted before, then please watch our video that we're going to release next Monday, where we go into detail on how to actually vote. It is very simple. Don't be scared, because you don't need to speak German. You just need to inform yourself on who to vote. And we believe in Simple Germany that we have the privilege of living in a democracy and voting. So it's important to do so and to not take this responsibility lightly. So we hope with this video, we shed a little bit of light and motivated you to go and vote. And if you're in the process of becoming a German citizen, then make sure to check out our study kit that will help you pass that German citizenship citizenship test with flying colors. Until next time,
Tschüss!
the Bundestagswahl.
Sehr gut.
Okay.
You want me to answer?
Yeah, of course. Think we clap a lot?